Good morning, students. Today we'll discuss about some important terms used in the process of muscle contraction. The first term is sarcomere. Sarcomere is the ultimate unit of contraction, or you can say it is the basic contractile unit of the skeletal muscle. It is defined as a segment between two neighboring Z lines, and it is composed of actin and myosin. The thin filament and the thick filament, they are the part of the sarcomere. The thin filament is formed by three important proteins, that is actin, troponin and tropomyosin, whereas the thick filament is formed by the myosin. There are two lines in the sarcomere. One is the M line, which is present between the two thin filament, and second is the Z line, where the actin filaments they are present. So the A band, that is an isotropic band, and I band, that is isotropic band, they form the part of the sarcomere. The I band is present on the either side of Z line, whereas the A band is formed between the two Z lines. The thick filaments, they are attached to the Z line with the help of another protein known as titin. So this is the structure of the sarcomere. Second important term is single muscle twitch. Single muscle twitch is single contraction of skeletal muscle. There are three distinct phases in the single muscle twitch, that is the latent phase, the contraction phase and the relaxation phase. In the latent phase, this is the interval which a muscle it takes before the contraction, that is it prepares itself for the contraction, and during the contraction phase the muscle it contracts, it shortens, and relaxation phase it is represented by the downward curve where the muscle is going back to its original state of relaxation. So this single muscle twitch, it includes latent phase, then is the contraction phase, and is the relaxation phase. Next term is tetanus. A tetanus is prolonged contractile without relaxation, and it results from repeated stimulation before the muscle it shows relaxation. So in the first case, you can say a single muscle twitch is there before relaxation. If the stimulus it comes, so before completing the relaxation phase, the muscle it again becomes in the contraction state. And if we give huge number of stimulation or stimulus one after the another, then the tetanus it will be formed. Next term is motor unit. A motor unit is made up of the motor neurons and the skeletal muscle fibers innervated by the motor neurons. So one motor unit, it will be innervated by the neuron and they will be contracting at a same time. Suppose 10 myofibrils, they are connected by one neuron, they will constitute one motor unit. So in this way, the group of motor unit, they often work together to coordinate the contraction of single muscle. All or none principle, it will be working during the muscle contraction. Next term is action potential in the case of the muscles. So action potential is, in the case of muscle contraction, the sodium and potassium, they play very important role. So before the, or you can say during the latent phase, when the muscle is stimulated, some minimum threshold of stimulus is required, and there is a depolarization, and sodium ion, it enters into it, creating the action potential. After the action potential is created, the repolarization of nerve is there, and potassium ion, they move out from the membrane. When the potassium ion, they move out, then there is hyperpolarization, and it will take some time to enter into repolarization state. So in the case of skeletal muscle, the action potential, it includes the movement of sodium and potassium ion. During the depolarization, sodium ion, it moves in, and during the repolarization, the potassium ion, they move out. Whereas in the case of cardiac muscle, the calcium ion also plays important role during the action potential. What happens? During the threshold, or you can say when the stimulus is given to the muscle, during the latent period, it prepares itself for the action potential. And firstly, the sodium ion, they move in. When the sodium ion, they move in, it leads to the depolarization. When the action potential is achieved, then the potassium ion, they starts moving out slowly. Then comes the role of the calcium ion. These calcium ion, they delays the process of the relaxation for some time, and as a result of which a plateau is formed, and then the repolarization by the throwing out of potassium is there. So as a result of which, after a peak, there is a formation of plateau because of the presence of, because of the involvement of the calcium ion in the case of the cardiac muscle. So this is the basic difference between the action potential of skeletal muscle and the cardiac muscles. Next terminology is sodium potassium exchange pump. Sodium potassium exchange pump, it is responsible for the movement of the stimulus in the case of the muscles. So one molecule of ATP is required to throw 3 molecules of sodium out and 2 molecules of potassium in. This is known as sodium potassium exchange pump. That is, with 1 ATP molecule, 3 molecules of sodium, they are thrown out, and 2 molecules of potassium, they are thrown in, and thereby the membrane permeability is maintained. Next terminology is rigor mortis. Rigor mortis is a post-mortem rigidity, and is the stiffening of the muscles and the joints in the body post-death of a person, usually lasting between 1 and 4 days. It is the third stage and a noticeable sign of death, which is due to the chemical changes in the muscle, which brings about a stiffening of the muscles of the limbs. So rigor mortis is one of the recognizable change which causes rigidity in the structure of the muscle. Basically, the rigor mortis is caused when there is no more available ATP is there for the removal of myosin heads from the actin. When no more energy is available, then they remain bound to the actin muscle, causing the state of sustained contraction, and this is known as rigor mortis. Next is all or none principle. The all or none principle, it states that if the muscle it contracts, it will contract as a whole with the full strength. If the stimulus is less, it will not contract. So a stimulus of some threshold potential is required for the contraction of muscle, and if extra stimulus is given, it will contract at the same pace. It will not contract faster. So this is known as all or none principle. Next term is A band and I band. A band and I band, they are part of the sarcomere. I band is present between the Z line and it is known as isotropic band. That is, the plane polarized light can pass through the I band and it is formed by the thin filaments only. So this is I band. Whereas the A band is known as anisotropic band, and plane polarized light cannot pass through it because it is formed by both thick and thin filaments. Next term is thin filament. Thin filaments, they are formed by three types of protein. Number one, the F-actin. Number two, troponin. Number three, tropomyosin. These three all together, they'll form the thin filament. The ADP present on the F-actin molecule, they form the active sites for the head of myosin to move. Next is thick filament. Thick filament is formed by the myosin. The myosin, it has got a tail and a head. The head, it can show the hinge movement. It binds with the active site on the thin filament. It brings the thin filament inside with the help of the ATP after binding with the active site. So when the thin filaments and thick filament, they move over each other, a sliding filament hypothesis is there and the muscle contraction is caused. Next term is sarcoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum present in the muscle is known as sarcoplasmic reticulum. These sarcoplasmic reticulum, they are storehouse of calcium. When the stimulus from motor end plate, it comes to the T-tubules, because they are present just near to the T-tubules. So The stimulus, when is received by the sarcoplasmic reticulum, they lead to the increase in the release of calcium ion. This calcium ion from the sarcoplasmic reticulum is sensed by troponin of the thin filament, thereby initiating the muscle contraction.